So it was us in the back, okay, just bouncing, just all over, and a guy in a regular car in that Kia driving after us and just filming it. And I was like, oh, so we really are the entertainment.
Welcome to What Came After. I'm your host, Manya Marcus. On What Came After, we'll take a look at the many ways that people's lives changed on and after the brutal massacre in Israel on October 7th, 2023. We'll be speaking with people in Israel and around the world about how the devastating attack by Hamas has shifted, shaped, and changed them. To learn more about our podcast, please visit us at whatcameafter.com. Thank you so much. I am joined today by Greg Kunin. I would love for you to introduce yourself and let us know just your backstory and what brought you to Israel.
So what brought me to Israel originally was the collapse of the Soviet Union. My parents were like, we don't want to stay. They looked around like, this is not going to a good place. They lost all of their property. Like they had the apartment taken away, summer house, everything taken away. But they moved to a lovely town called Kiryat Shmona, right on the border with Lebanon.
Heard about it
during
recently.
the first Gulf War. So
Okay.
it was kind of interesting because I got to experience Soviet military technique on the receiving side.
Oh, wow.
And then I was in Israel until I was 15. And then my dad got a job in Moscow. So I moved to Moscow, finished school, and got into college there. And then the Russians kind of kicked me out. They took away my citizenship. It was a whole story. Like, basically, when my dad got offered the job, Putin was like, Jews are not so bad. Maybe we shouldn't have taken away all of their Soviet citizenships. Let's call some of them back. And then 6 years later, they were like, oh, there's some bureaucratical error. So you guys don't have a citizenship anymore.
So it just got deleted.
It just got deleted. Now we have a house on like that passport. I got into free college on that passport. So we were screwed. They basically left us no option, so we came back to Israel. And I've
Did
been
you
there.
finish college there?
Yeah, psychology. Still, it was a very weird experience. Like moving there was weird because Russian schools are the opposite of Israeli schools. Israeli schools are very much kind of do what you want and you can call the teacher by their first name. It doesn't work like that in Russia.
I would imagine not.
Yeah, in university, I met my wife. She was very active in Jewish community in Moscow. She knew she wanted to move to Israel and got married and moved back to Israel.
Did you stick around Kiryat Shmona?
I visit there occasionally. It's actually a very lovely place. It was very surreal because on one hand, it's very scary. Like, Nachash Tsefa, Nachash Tsefa. That was the code to get into the bomb shelters. Sharav Kaved, that was get out.
What do you mean a code?
There wasn't the azaka, like the air sirens. We didn't have them back then.
Okay.
There was a special code they would announce.
Now,
It
is
was
this
on TV
before
and
the
radio.
Iron Dome? Or?
A lot before. We got the American Patriot system around that time. So I do this bit on my stand-up like that. My kids play on the playground. That's like all safe and soft. And my playground was 3 Syrian tanks that they painted in bright, happy colors. So one of them is like, pink, and one of them is baby blue, and one is banana yellow. And they're just standing right now on the entrance to Kiryat Shmona. I'm just thinking like some Syrian guy needed to come back and tell his commander, what did the Israelis do with this tank? So yeah, I've been kind of I'm kind of a weird mix of Israeli, Russian, and American.
So where does the American piece come in?
So there's a legend in my family that my great-grandmother was American from, I think, Massachusetts. And she was visiting her relatives in Poland in the worst possible time, which was 1939. So when the Germans and the Soviet divided Poland, she just got stuck on the Soviet side. And that was not a good time to say, I'm American. And that's it. She lived the rest of her life in the Soviet Union.
Wow.
So that's kind of the family tie. And also, like many Israelis and, who immigrated here, I was raised by the TV. So that's the English. And my entire career was around working with Americans and, the US market. So that's where the American fits in.
Have you lived in America?
Briefly, like a week or a month, or mostly on like business trips and stuff.
Okay.
But that's the goal.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that a goal specifically catalyzed by the war?
It helped. The war helped.
Mm-hmm.
But also, that's the all-star league for comedy. Like, if you really want to be a good comedian, you got to make it in America, because there's something about stand-up that's kind of uniquely American.
So I'm realizing that I haven't said that you are Greg Kunin, stand-up comedian.
Yeah, that's not a problem.
I haven't said that yet. And I think that it's important that I say that because I specifically wanted to talk to somebody who is doing comedy in the wake of the war. So let's talk about your journey to stand-up, and then we'll make a transition into what that looks like now.
Sure. So I've been in corporate America for many years, and then I had my own company doing medical equipment. And I remember I was sitting at the business lounge in Newark Airport, and I was just deleting posts on Facebook that I think could kind of screw a promotion for me. And I was like,
meaning
what?
They were a little off color.
They were too much on color, let's say.
Okay, understood.
Because before I did corporate America, I was like in advertising, and everything was fair game. But I was like, what am I doing? And then eventually I just realized I can't do it anymore. Like, I can't be that guy. I'm just, hi, I'm Greg. I'm the director of strategic product development and blah, blah, blah. So first of all, I started teaching because my kids were complaining that they don't like schools, and there's a whole crisis in Israel with teachers. I started teaching. So I teach English and debate. And I'm kind of a freelance teacher. So I wasn't teaching in one school. I was all over. So I got to meet Bedouins in Hua, which was cool, because I only knew the racist stereotypes. Like, I was, okay, Bedouins probably going to steal my car, because that's all I knew. I didn't know anything beyond the stereotypes. And then suddenly, you get to a school and you see these kids, and they're real people, and, you can make a real connection with them.
Right.
I've been to like Bet Jan teaching those kids, and it kind of gave me a whole perspective. And I was like, there's a lot of funny stuff people don't know about. I always loved stand-up. Ever since I was a kid, there was just something about, humor. And I was like, I'm going to try to make some jokes about these different people and maybe break some stereotypes that I had before. One of the first jokes I did, and I'm not claiming it's a good one, but it was like, when I first came to the Bedouin school, I was afraid that they were going to steal my car. But then I realized they have higher standards. My car would need to be so much better for them to even consider
well
that.
Well done, yes.
And I've been doing it for about 2 years. And I've been doing it a lot more intensely, more seriously after, actually, October 7th.
Okay, let me pause there. You've been doing stand-up for 2 years only?
Yeah.
Your wife married a man who was in corporate America. Was your professional pivot difficult for your family?
Yes and no. So my wife married a broke student who was crazy in love with her. And also, there was no proposal. She just informed me that we're getting married. She was like, we're getting married. And I was like, there's a pause there. Is that a question? She's like, in August. And then I realized, oh, she's not even asking. Like, it's just, she's informing me. Which was like, okay, she's beautiful, smart, and she loves me for whatever reason. Like, I'm going to take that.
You'll be there in August.
Yeah, and like, we've been together for 16 years, married 15. So we did the whole path together. So actually, it was difficult for my wife that I was making more money than her. She wanted to be successful, and she struggled in the beginning. She was a psychologist, and you don't make a lot of money as a psychologist in Israel in the beginning. And she was just miserable. And I told her, look, a job is one out of two things, love or money. And you don't love your work, and it's not a lot of money. Why are you doing it? And after we had our daughter, she said, I want a doula. I want a doula with our second child. And then I saw, like, I told you, like, you're reading all these books about being a doula and how to be a doula. I'm like, why are you not a doula? Like, if you do this in your spare time, you're probably going to be a really good one. And it took a lot of convincing, but I think this is her 8th year as a doula, like hundreds of births. She did the course, and I was lucky enough to support her when she was building her career. And don't get me wrong, like, it sucks that we have a lot less money now, but I do think, and she told me she feels good that now kind of she's the person who makes the money in the house, and she can allow me to pursue that dream. So the other way around, it just made us appreciate each other more, and it brought more tension in terms of like just day-to-day bills and stuff. But on a higher level, it removed a lot of tension because there's no competition between me and my wife anymore.
That's beautiful. Okay, so let's go to October 7th. When did you know? When did you say to yourself, I think people are ready to laugh again?
So it was 2 weeks after. It was very early. And it was actually a friend of my wife who was just over for tea. And she said, I'm so happy that the VOD had a recording of this old stand-up performance because all they've been showing for 2 weeks is the news, and I'm going crazy. And that stand-up just gave me such a sense of relief. And I was like, okay, screw it. Because I've been wanting to do stand-up like 2 days after October 7th. Because to me, that's the only way I can actually bring some good into the world. I view the role of a stand-up comedian. People walk into the club and maybe they're not in a great mood. And my job is to make sure that they leave in a slightly better mood, like 10% better. And maybe they're 10% nicer to someone else. And that will, fade out eventually. But if you get good enough, you can make people's mood 20% better, and then 30, and then 100. So I knew immediately I want to do it. But people were scared. I tried to organize something, and a lot of comedians said no.
Because they felt it was disrespectful,
They
not the
didn't
right
know
time.
how to tackle it. Like, what do you do? Because it was all the people who were evacuated. I had a contact in City Hall in the town where I live, and I knew there were some kids from the OTEF that were evacuated in a hotel in our town. And I was like, do you think it's a good idea to put on a stand-up show for them?
Pause for a second. OTEF is the Gaza envelope.
Yeah, the Gaza
which is where
envelope.
the kibbutzim were really, really ravaged. And how old were the kids that you were talking about?
It was kids from 5 to 18. So it's just families. So imagine these are people who 2 weeks ago experienced October 7th firsthand. And they're just,
Apocalyptic.
and they've been in a hotel for 2 weeks. So it was hard. It's challenging because the problem when you're a starting comedian is I don't have an audience. I'm not good enough to have a following of people who, Greg, I like his humor. So you never know. So professionally, it's very challenging because very different audience. Plus the conditions were terrible. Like there was no stage, there was no light. There was a lady doing like songs and dance and karaoke right before us. We were like sitting in a lounge. So it's like weird. I'm just standing in the hotel living room, basically, trying to make people laugh.
Yeah.
But the guy that I reached out was like, yeah, like they've been asking for some sort of entertainment that is not sad or just generic. And I was able to convince 2 other comedians to join me. And luckily, they were more experienced than I was. So they were much funnier than I was. But that kind of gave me the green light. And I was surprised that they just wanted to laugh. There was no tension. They didn't talk about October 7th. We didn't make any jokes. It took me a year, not a year, but because it's not a year yet, but I think it was 10 months until I tried.
To make a joke about
Yeah.
October
I had
7th.
like really softball joke, which I would say, I know this is an open mic and I'm not very well prepared, but I'm still better prepared than the IDF was on October 7th.
Oh, God.
So that was my first
That
kind
is
of
a softball, though.
Yeah, I
we
was
can
like,
pretty much all
I'll
agree.
test the water. And then I
Yeah.
tried one that was like a little bit further. It was like, I feel really bad for the people who are kidnapped in Gaza because they need to sit in a dark dungeon with Israelis.
Oh, my God.
So
Look, that is
that was too
risky.
soon. That was
yes, and it's risky.
But if you don't take risks in comedy, you're not going to get anywhere. And that's where you can get the really big laughs. And that's where you can, it's not just 10% better mood. It's like 20% better mood.
Well, when your mood is starting, sub-zero,
Yeah.
20% makes a big difference. But, I think that your description of why you're drawn to comedy sounds like there's a lot of pathos and empathy and healing. The jokes that you make probably run the risk of you seeming disconnected or a little bit numb to the intensity of the pain that's around you. How do you make sure that people understand that there's a beating heart underneath this humor?
So you can do it on stage. Like I am struggling to be funny on social media. It's very difficult because there's no nuance. You can't see my face. You can't see my, expression. You can't hear the tone in which I'm saying it. I'm working now on focusing the jokes more about myself. So I'm trying to talk about my October 7th experience. And I think that makes it easier for people because then I'm the punchline and then it's easier and I'm not touching their trauma. Because at this point, I think Israel is just a nation with post-trauma. And everybody experienced it in a different way.
Well, listen, you and I are sitting here the day after we learned about this giant, when we read what happened with all these beepers exploding.
Yeah, who uses beepers?
But in terms of post-trauma, you guys are in ongoing trauma. It doesn't feel like anything is over.
It's very hard to look at it or process it because you're in it. So I think that's probably the biggest challenge. You can't process it because it's ongoing. And it has never been this long. Like I remember when we were starting doing videos explaining the situation, fighting off the propaganda. And I was telling people like Israel is going to be beautiful in the next few days. Because, I'm from Kiryat when I remember Israelis after war. And usually, the entire country would come together and people will be nice to each other. And I thought that is going to last. And then eventually we reached a point where the war was still going on, but this kind of post-war unity we usually have, it's not happening anymore. So again, comedy is something that can bring people together. And it's actually very difficult to find something that can make everybody laugh. Because in the past, you would have shows that everybody would watch. I remember when I was like a teen, Married with Children, like everybody watched that. Roseanne, everybody watched that. Yeah. And today, everybody has their own references because everybody has their own Netflix, their own shows. I'm like, oh, this amazing show. Everybody's talking, and I have never heard of that show. Like, what is it? I think Game of Thrones was the last one everybody watched. So it's hard to come up with references. But yeah, that's what I'm working on, trying to be more universally appealing.
Well, think about it. The shared references, at least in this country right now, are pretty horrible, right? I mean, we all know what's going on with the war, but those aren't the best references to draw from necessarily, or maybe they are fruitful. I don't know.
See, that's the big challenge in Israel because despite what it looks like, stand-up was pretty new here. There was never an Israeli George Carlin. Someone who just have the guts to take it to another level. Comedy was ever very, very soft here. So I'm not sure if the audience is even ready to tackle that trauma with humor because you don't start writing jokes with something funny. You usually start with something terrible. Laughter is not a goal. It's means to an end. You have pain and laughter is something that helps you get through it. It's never a starting point. When you write, you can't start with funny. You need to, okay, this is funny to help someone deal with this or process this. So I'm trying to work on something. I was actually considering tonight to do some October 7th jokes. And I was like, no, people are not going to enjoy them because I need it to be over first. Comedy's tragedy plus time. We still need the plus time until anyone can seriously laugh about it.
Is that a common maxim? Comedy is tragedy plus time?
That's a common definition of what comedy is.
Do you think you'll ever have time with this? I mean, it just feels like with this October 7th just keeps...
like we're still making Holocaust jokes. Come on.
No.
There's definitely going to be time.
I just, as somebody said to me, well, I really would prefer to visit Israel in peacetime.
Good luck waiting for that.
I guess you're not going to come, That's what I'm saying. Not that we can't, but is there any definitive ending?
No. At least I don't think so. I'm not seeing one because no one is trying to find one. People are still very much in the perception of, there's no win-win. Until we get to the mindset that there has to be a win-win, we're both going to lose. Like we need to find a solutions where it's not the Israelis win and the Palestinians lose. We need to find something we both hate. And maybe that will be good enough that we can find a solution for that.
I'm actually optimistic for the first time in 24 hours.
But when you meet them, first of all, what people don't get, it's not just two sides here. People in America think, oh, so it's the Jews and the Arabs, and no. First of all, the folks in Gaza have their own thing. Traditional Muslim society is not structured like classic Western society. Okay, so let's take the United Arab Emirates. They are a country only for foreign policy purposes. Each emirate has their own emir, and he's the king there. So that's more of the structure. It's more like a clan, like the Scottish clans. So within Gaza, you have a few clans with their own definitive kind of culture and history. You can call them tribes, whatever. Then you have the folks in the West Bank. And then you have the Bedouins, who are completely different with their own culture. And then you have the Druze, who have their own culture and religion. Like they have their own version of Islam. So there's a lot more minorities here. There's a lot more moving parts. That's why it's so complicated. But when you get to meet some of them, like I did not thought that Druze who are Muslim would be more right-wing than like Ben Gvir. Like I walk into the school and the first thing they say, okay, first thing, we need to kill everybody.
Yeah.
We need to like fight them and you need to do this and this. And I'm like, I'm here to teach debate.
Yeah.
I was also surprised that a lot of the Bedouins are just not part of it. They're just not part of this conflict. They have their own issues, which are mostly infrastructure and like I always say, the kids in that school in Hua were very motivated to get good grades so they can get out of Hua.
I read something about the Bedouin community. I don't know which one, but they have the highest graduation rates or Bagrut.
So I don't think that's the entire community because it's very different. I was in a very specific place.
Okay.
So right now, there's a lot of crime there. There's a lot of issues there. But at that specific school, yes, doctors and lawyers, that's what they're working on. And I remember there was such a funny moment. I walk into the school for the first time and the kids, there's like the yard and I see kids. And then one of them says the scariest thing that a Jew can hear an Arab say, Yehud, which is Jew.
Yes.
I'm just standing there with shocked face. Okay, they're going to lynch me. This was a trap. I was tricked into coming here. And then took a deep breath and I'm like, oh, he doesn't get what a Jew is doing here. And I don't know Arabic. And I was like, but yeah, that makes a lot more sense than him trying to kill me. Like,
just trying to identify who
he's
is
just,
this guy?
what is this Jew doing here? And I'm like, yeah, that probably will be the same.
And these are high
would be
school
asking.
students, right?
Yeah.
So they're not going to, they're just off the cuff. They'll say what they want.
What actually surprised me is that they don't know Hebrew, but they know English. The boys know a little bit of Hebrew because some of them work in Beersheba, like it's a Jewish town nearby, but they just don't have any interactions. Like the only thing in Hebrew was, thank you, Bougie Herzog, the president of Israel, for our new computer class. And they have like broken doors in the bathrooms and broken toilets. I'm like, I think they had more urgent needs than that computer class. There's a vibe that it's a community we're not investing in.
This is the Bedouin community?
Yeah. So they serve in the military and they were in October 7th. They got killed in October 7th. They suffered that. And I think actually investing in these communities can be part of a solution. So before we even get along with, the Palestinians in Gaza or in the West Bank, we need to make sure that in Israel, like classical Israel, we get along and we know each other better. And it was fun because I got to organize a competition between the Bedouin kids and Jewish kids in Beersheba. That was fun. Because first, none of them wanted to go. None of them wanted to go because they're like, they're going to be racist and they're going to be, and I said, yeah, they're going to be racist.
That's why we should go.
That's the crap you're going to get here in life. Like all of us have a certain amount, like I'll get crap for being the Russian kid. You'll get crap for being the Bedouin kid. Like that's life. This is a great opportunity for you. Yeah, there's going to be 2 or 3 kids that are going to be mean to you, but who cares? I'm going to make this awesome for you. And it went great. Like they got second place. They performed very well.
Wait, second place, 2 competing teams? That sounds like last place.
No. It was more.
Oh, okay.
They were the only Bedouin team, and there was like 5 or 6 teams from Israeli schools.
That is impressive. I thought you were saying
there
were 2 teams and they came in second.
He's just trying to like sell last place.
This is spin. In terms of the Druze community, I was here when the Majd al-Shams tragedy happened, and I remember being so confused. I was not confused that Netanyahu was kind of booed out of the funerals. But what I was confused by coming from the West was that what they were saying to him is, you've abandoned us and we need to go into Lebanon and take them out.
Dude.
It just doesn't fit my narrative about...
You know the history of the Druze there?
No.
The Druze are their own community with their own religion. They only marry other Jews, very close community that was very oppressed in the Muslim world. They call them a cult, but kind of different versions of Islam. And until we got the Golan Heights, they were part of Syria. And at a certain point, when Israel captured those territories, half of the village stayed in Syria. So they would actually need to go to the fence and shout to their relatives. That's how conflicted they were. So again, I had Druze serve with me in the military. They served in the military, but there was a whole generation that was very conflicted. Like, who are we?
About what country they...
Not even country, again, like country is I view that as a very Western term. Think about it. All the countries, like Israel was founded in 1948. Yeah, so did all the rest of the countries that appeared. Like Syria, when it appeared, Lebanon. They're very artificial. They did not reflect the mentality or how people, viewed themselves.
Meaning just as a concept of a nation at all.
Yeah, they had a different concept of the Druze were a small community that was independent and they had their own kind of life and thing they were doing. And suddenly, what do you mean we're a part of Syria? What is Syria? And still in Syria, there's not really such a thing as a Syrian. So the last name will be al-Halabi or where they're from the city they're from. So you had a whole generation of people who were conflicted. And now the second generations, they're very much, consider themselves a part of this country. And they serve in the military and they, do like combat roles.
So it's kind of a typical first generation, second generation trajectory that we see many places.
Yeah.
What about you? What about you and your kids? Do you consider yourself first generation Israeli, or your parents came with you? How do you think of your children's identities?
It's weird. The only thing I identify as a Moscovian. Moscow. I identify with a city. How it was. Not now. 2007. But I struggle because my great grandmother on my mother's side wasn't Jewish. So I'm not considered a Jew by like Jewish religious laws. So that always was kind of a conflict for me. Like on one hand, yes, I'm Israeli, but I'm not really Jewish. And also, growing up in American humor and American shows and speaking a lot of English, and other kids didn't know how to speak English, I was felt like an outsider. So my people are funny people with sense of humor. I view them as a separate nation. People with a sense of humor are a separate nation. By the way, if we ever unite, we will create the best country ever. Because imagine a country where if you can solve something with a joke, just they need to accept it. How better would the DMV be? Like the person sitting, like getting the application, and everybody just have a sense of humor. And in terms of city, it's Moscow, but also, that's where, I was a teenager and a student, and it was a lot of fun and just an amazing city. But no, I don't consider myself really an Israeli or, really Russian.
So how do you view your kids? Are they technically Jewish?
Yeah.
Okay.
I fixed that mistake.
Okay.
I was smart.
Well,
I fixed that mistake first thing when I met are you Jewish? And like, on both sides? And she was like, yes. I'm like, we can work with that. So yeah, they were born in Tel Aviv and, they feel connected to this place. But I also want them to be more worldly because there's a lot of stuff that we get wrong. And we need to do a better job in acknowledging that and dealing with that. The mentality here, like I always say, like the Middle East has real prison vibes.
What do you mean by that?
If you show weakness in this part of the world, it's not going to be met with empathy. That's going to be viewed as an opportunity. And that's just how things work.
So as I'm hearing you talk, it's true that, you are of the tribe of comedy and you are of the tribe of Moscow 2007. But you're just incredibly multicultural. Like everything that I'm hearing now suggests...
I know, it's terrible for comedy.
I mean,
I don't have a niche.
You may be a little overinformed and overexposed. I don't know how much of comedy is good because it develops within insularity. I don't know. I'm trying to think of good comedians. I think that you're pretty funny.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a compliment and an insult at the same. Pretty funny.
You're funny. You're funny.
Okay.
But I think it's a challenge. I mean, you're talking about a level of nuance that I haven't actually heard very often. You're bringing a Western consciousness to a Middle Eastern situation. You're bringing a Middle Eastern awareness to the West, just as we're talking about this. And all of this gets filtered somehow into a punchline. And I am impressed by that.
Thank you.
It seems hard. So I want to try to, again, kind of get to this question of
Sure.
what is happening with you emotionally right now, because you're very polished and poised. This has been a horrible time.
Oh, I'm a mess.
You are? Okay.
I'm a mess. I will get depressed one day and I just don't understand, why am I here? Because, they say, we're fighting for our homes. Well, I'm renting. Okay. So what am I fighting for? Prices are insane. Everything's expensive. Quality of education is not great. I'm not actually a Jew. But then something cool would happen. Like I would be in Jerusalem and it's a Saturday, so everything's closed and I'm thirsty. And me and my daughter would go and ask an old lady, hey, is there a place we can buy water? And she would invite us to her home. And she would tell me the story of her husband. That's like a real story that happened to me. And I told my daughter, this is the Israel I love. This is how we used to be. We used to be nice to each other. We did not lock doors where I grew up. And that was not a good neighborhood. But we just had that sense of community. And I think we're kind of losing it a little bit. And you got to be strong for your kids. But on the other hand, I want them to be aware. Really, am I allowed to curse?
Yeah.
Oh, no. Oh, it fucks you up as a father when you realize, oh, so there's an option my daughter can get raped to death. I wasn't aware that the way I was lying to myself before October 7th, I was like, okay, they got more sophisticated. They realized that, kids and women is bad PR. So they mostly attack like Orthodox Jews that look very Jewish or soldiers. Like they've matured and then shit. What do you mean? And on that day, my daughter is in this, it's called Seirut. It's basically kids knowing, how to build camp, like scouts.
Mm-hmm.
And she was on a field trip in the north, October 7th. Again, I'm from the north, so I know the next step. The next step is always, if it starts in Gaza, something's going to come from Lebanon. And I just remember me calming my wife down, calming my son down, and saying, I'm going to get in the car and I'm getting my daughter. Because I don't trust anyone. I don't trust anyone. Like, I don't trust the scout people. I don't trust the government. And I was just driving October 7th, like 150 kilometers per hour. I don't know how much that is.
I don't know what the miles are. That's a lot.
And it was so surreal because it's all empty.
Mm.
And I like scenes from like computer games, just, cops throwing away like the stuff that blows up the tires.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, hitting the brakes, so I stopped before that,
Mm.
and it was just empty roads all the way. So I picked her up and a few of her friends, and so when you're a dad, it's kind of screw my feelings. I need to talk about my daughter first, and it was like a whole thing of, okay, how the hell do I get her to talk about emotions? She's 13, and it took her 6 months before she even started talking. Like, yeah, and we were all scared, and they took away our phones so we don't see the news, and that scared us even more, and we didn't know what was happening, and she kind of started talking about that. My son is 10, so he has a more kind of abstract perception of what happened. So he would just go, is someone from the Hamas going to come into the house and kill me? And again, humor helps. And I'm like, probably sure he's going to need to get through the dog first. So I have a 50-kilo shepherd dog at home, which helps.
And your son accepts that?
He would laugh, like the dog protects me. He's very rational. So I would tell him, look, this is closed. And again, my first memory of coming to Israel, we were temporarily housed in Haifa in a junkie area on the ground floor. So I remember me sleeping in my bedroom in a junkie, climbing through the window.
You mean a drug user?
Yeah.
Okay.
And my dad just running to and kicking him out. So I've been paranoid my entire life. So every time I get to a new apartment, something, I check all the entrances. Okay, if someone would to try to break in, how would he do that? So I just took my son for that tour, and he was like, okay. He's like, I think you're right. I think you thought of everything. But it's mostly the kids. So also my daughter is in a very old school. So she's in junior high, but it's an old building, and they don't have a bomb shelter that's big enough. And they try to come up with a solution, and the best solution was, let's put them in the gym when there's a lot of windows and glass. And my daughter was like, this is dumb. If there's an explosion, all the windows are going to pop and it's going to be more dangerous. So I just told her, okay, you don't have to go to school. Like, if you don't feel safe, we'll figure out the homework. And I just tried to create an environment where they can talk about it. And yeah, then the humor comes naturally because, I don't have answers. I don't know what to tell them.
So you're also describing, you're describing tragedy plus time, and you're also describing deflection under really dire circumstances. Did your daughter skip school?
A lot, yeah. Which she hates. It started with a big fight because she would say, I don't want to go to school, and that's it.
This is after October 7th.
Yeah, I don't want to go to school, and that's it. And, like the typical teenagers, that's like, door slammed. And then eventually I got her to talk. Like, I'll say yes, but you need to tell me the reason. And then she told me, well, look, there's this bomb shelter, and that's a good bomb shelter, but only like these kids go in the bomb shelter, and there's not enough room for us. So I don't feel safe. And I was like, okay, don't go. And she was like, really? I'm like, yeah, if I can understand why, it's easier for me to say yes. You don't know how to deal with it. Like, I took a risk, and I was like, okay, I'm going to provoke her. I'm going to fight over, like, talk to me. Because I don't want her to grow up with October 7th as an unprocessed trauma. Like, it happened, it's real, but I want to be there for her and help her process it. It's never going to leave her, but I don't want it to mess it up in a weird way, because that's how trauma works. If you don't process it, it's just going to pop and, oh, I really like smoking and I don't know why. Oh, I shake my leg and I don't know why. Oh, I have this stick and I don't know why. At least I thought, okay, it's going to be messed up, and I'm going to need to talk to her about some terrible things, like the stuff that happened October 7th, but at least maybe we can process it somehow. And right now, basically, our approach, we visited my sister, and she lives in like a village outside Barcelona. My sister quit Israel a long time ago. She was just watching the news like it's a reality show, and she's like, I'm not staying. I see where this show is going. And this year we visited my sister, and it was so good for the kids. Because it's like a house, and a very nice house, and it's mountains, and there's nothing around. So that was good. And then my daughter was like, I think I'm going to want to live in Spain for a few years or somewhere calm. And again, I was like, that's cool. Start learning Spanish. You don't want to immigrate as a useless person. Telling you as someone who immigrated 3 times, like Soviet Union, Israel, Russia, Israel. But yeah, I wanted to be more open-minded. And I also... So my daughter was like, I really want to do this and this in the military. And I was like, think of what it's going to do for you. Don't just think, oh, I want to be this altruistic. Yeah, like find a role that's good for the country in the military, but also good for you. And if they offer you a role that's, really bad or useless or very risky, like, take that into consideration.
When you say good for you, you mean something that you can actually
use as
forward.
A career. Yeah. I've like I know people who did like this course in the Air Force, and they're airplane technicians, and they nail really nice jobs after they leave, especially if you're like in the cyber unit or something like that. I wanted her to be more mindful. Again, like there's a reason why they're telling you it's awesome. And
do you feel like you're processing what happened on the 7th through your kids?
Maybe.
Okay.
Maybe. As weird as it sounds, it's like survivor's guilt, but I don't know. Like, I know people who died in the attack, but it's no one I knew directly. So it's also weird if you're like, how come I don't know anyone? Like, why am I so lucky? Remember, it hit me like, I have a really good friend, and his grandmother died, and she was like 90.
She was killed?
Yeah. And like, I have friends who lost an uncle, and like, I know a lot of people who know people, because I also teach at Sderot. Like right now, next week I'm starting a class there. And it's so weird because the city looks the same. I was watching this movie. You know who Kate Setnick is? He's an author, and he's a Holocaust survivor. And he wrote a few books that kind of shaped how Holocaust is viewed in Israel. And he processed his trauma through writing. And I was watching this documentary about him. He said one of the things that he struggled the most when he got out of Auschwitz, and the world was the same. Nothing has changed. It's the same sky. It's the same green grass, same blue sand. How come nothing changed? And that's a very weird feeling for me. I remember when I first went into Sderot, and I was expecting, I don't know, the only thing difference is that there was like a military post on the entrance to the town.
I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. You probably are. But there's this concept at the end of Shiva, somebody takes you around and shows you that the world hasn't changed despite your loss and your pain.
Yeah, I did not know that.
You get up at the end of it, and you're walked around your block, usually by a rabbi, and it's preparation for this surreality of my life has been potentially torn apart, and the house next door looks no different.
That's
so
crazy.
This is,
But I don't get invited to shivas or funerals anymore. Again, comedian first. If I see something funny, I'm going to ruin a funeral. Not for me. For me, it's going to go so much better, but I'm no longer invited.
Okay. So comedy is, again, we keep coming back to like all the things that it is for you, but it's also a comfort zone. So let's end with you telling me,
fine.
No, please, about some awesome show that you've done since the war started.
So it was maybe a month and a half after the war started, and soldiers were bored. So we started touring and performing to the soldiers. And the first guys we performed to were the artillery guys. And they promised me, first of all, they said, you're going to get to this kibbutz. We can't tell you where we are because we're in the shetach. The shetach means the territory. And they love to say that, like, we're in the shetach. We're in the shetach, civilian. And I'm like, dude, come on. Like, come on. Like, we can meet in an office over coffee. Like,
right,
stop
that would
with
be fine. Yeah.
No. We're in the shetach. And get here, and we'll pick you up in a really cool military jeep. So I get to the kibbutz, like 2 hours driving north.
This is in the north.
Yeah, this is in the north. This is when the whole mess with Lebanon started. So we got the approvals, and so I get to the kibbutz, and there's one military jeep going through, and another one, and another one. And then there's a Kia Picanto. And I'm like, this isn't the car I was expecting.
Wait, that's the car you get?
Yeah, I was like,
the Kia.
I can do a selfie with this. We're going to the shetach. And like, it's a child's toy, basically. And like,
it's tiny. For those who don't know, it's a tiny car.
Tiny car. It's a car that's so tiny, like, and like, get in and shut up, like, very serious. We drive, and then we stop in the middle. He takes a turn in a random place, and the military jeep is there. And I'm so happy. And then they give us like a bulletproof vest and a helmet. And I was with this guy who's Sephardi, and was like, immediately told him, okay, you look like an Al Jazeera reporter. Because like, just with the helmet and the vest. And then they just put us in the back, and no one told us that that was a terrible idea, because it's all just dirt. So it was us in the back, okay, just bouncing just all over. And a guy in a regular car in that Kia driving after us and just filming it. And I was like, oh, so we really are the entertainment. We're not here to entertain. So we get into the base on the shetach. First of all, logistics was a mess. So I walk in, and the first thing I see is a lot of bearded, tough men sleeping in the Hello Kitty tents. And then this is the last thing I'll say. So then they had this station where they had like the stuff that goes into the cannon. Like, do you want to write something there? And like, do you want to dedicate it to someone? And I was like, I don't have anyone specific in mind. So I was just like, Yechia Sinwar. I was like, if that hits, how awesome would that be?
Brilliant. Greg, this was amazing. Thank you so much. We are being kicked out of our makeshift little studio here, but are you going to give me links where people can follow you, and we can put them in the show
Again,
notes?
I'm terrible on social media. Like, come to shows.
Actually, you know, the reason that we're doing this interview is because I thought you were pretty funny on social media.
Thank you. I was fishing for a compliment.
I've never seen you live, so I hope that people will watch, and I really appreciate this.
Yes, I'll give you links for sure.
Thanks so much.
Open up and let go. Let the river wind carry you home. Do you feel it? Can you hear it down low? Like a locomotive coming in slow. Flicker with the flame down low. Round and round and round we go. You don't ever want to lose your life. I won't ever let you lose that fight. Everything is gonna be alright. Everything is gonna be just fine. I won't ever let you lose your way. I won't ever let it go that way. Everything is gonna be alright. Everything is gonna, don't you ever forget. Spread kindness to the ones you met, and give a little more than you get. and abandon any old regret. Just focus on the goals you set, 'cause this old life's not over yet. You don't ever want to lose your life. I won't ever let you lose that fight. Everything is gonna be alright. Everything is gonna be just fine. I won't ever let you lose your way. I won't ever let it go that way. Everything is gonna be alright. Everything is gonna be just fine. You don't ever want to lose your life. I won't ever let you lose that fight. Everything is gonna be alright. Everything is gonna be just fine. I won't ever let you lose your way. I won't ever let it go that way. Everything is gonna be alright. Everything is gonna be okay. You don't ever want to lose your life. I won't ever let you lose that fight. Everything is gonna be alright. Everything is gonna be just fine. I won't ever let you lose your way. I won't ever let it go that way. Everything is gonna be alright. Everything is gonna be great. 'Cause I love you. Won't ever wanna lose your life. I won't ever let you lose that fight. Everything is gonna be alright. Everything is gonna be just fine. And I won't ever let you lose your way. I won't ever let it go that way. Everything is gonna be alright. Everything is gonna be just fine. And you won't ever wanna lose your life. I won't ever let you lose that fight. Everything is gonna be alright. Everything is gonna be just fine. And I won't ever let you lose your way. I won't ever let it go that way.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate, review, and subscribe to What Came After wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find us online at whatcameafter.com.